All right, back with the breaking news this morning. U.S. military strikes on Syria are getting support from NATO, but condemnation from Russia. Vladimir Putin has called military action by the United States, the United Kingdom, and France an act of aggression. Russia also claims Soviet-made defense systems intercepted 71 cruise missiles launched last night. The Pentagon is expected to provide details of the military operation in a news conference in about 15 minutes from now.
All right, Democrats and at least one Republican criticizing President Trump for not getting congressional approval to launch this strike in Syria in the first place. The White House firing back saying, quote, "We feel that it's the president's authority under Article 2 of the Constitution. And when there are chemical weapons being deployed in strategic areas where there are battles with ISIS, that is in the national interest." Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Donald McEachin of Virginia. He's a member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us on this early Saturday morning. Very much appreciate it. First and foremost, give me your reaction so far to the strikes in Syria.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show this morning. You know, the strikes, I think, were appropriate. I think they were proportional, but that doesn't really get the issue of Syria. You know, the NDAA that we passed last year that the president signed said that he would report to us with a plan for Syria as well as the rest of the Middle East by February 1st. He's failed to do that. You know, I represent thousands of military personnel in my district, and we take military action very seriously. And the least we can do is to have a comprehensive plan for Syria as we go forward.
Congressman, let me read you a tweet that was by Republican Congressman Justin Amash. He tweeted out last night, "These offensive strikes against Syria are unconstitutional, illegal, and reckless. The next Speaker of the House must reclaim congressional war powers as prescribed in Article 1 of the Constitution. Speaker Ryan has completely abdicated one of his most important responsibilities." It seems from that tweet, Congressman, that Congressman Amash is kind of kicking this down the road to the next Congress that comes in. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Is there anything this Congress can do between now and the midterms and to capitalize on what seems to be some bipartisan level about whether or not the president had the legal authority to conduct this? Is there something this Congress can do?
Well, this Congress ought to demand that the president follow the law, again, the law that the president signed, and come up with a Syrian policy that we can look at, that we can talk about, and that we can debate. But just to go to conduct foreign policy, and particularly policy in the Middle East, by tweet and by sort of by the seat of your pants is not appropriate, and it's dangerous.
So, Congressman, what do you want to hear from the president with regards to a greater Syria policy after his strike last night?
I want to know, are we going to increase the number of troops that we're going to put in Syria? What are we going to do diplomatically? Are we going to use certain economic sanctions? Are those sanctions just going to apply to Syria? Are we going to apply them to Russia? Are we going to apply them to Iran? There's a myriad of options that we could and should possibly employ. But I don't have access to the experts. I don't have access to the generals and the diplomats like the president does. And that's why we've asked him to come up with this plan. And again, it was due by February 1st, and we're still waiting.
So from the intelligence that you have, Congressman, what do you think should happen? Do you want to increase the number of troops in Syria? Do you want to see sanctions put in place?
What I would like to see is some really humanitarian aid for the Syrian people. You know, we absolutely have to protect our troops that are there, but the notion that we're not going to do our part to accept Syrian refugees while the rest of the world does their part, to me, is a little bit disingenuous while we're dropping rockets and missiles over there. Again, that strike was appropriate, I think. It was proportional. It had a purpose. I appreciate what Secretary Mattis had to say last night, but overall, we need a more comprehensive Syrian policy.
Congressman, really quickly, if I may, were you at all privy to any information the U.S. government had as to whether or not the Syrian government was, in fact, behind this chemical weapons attack?
No more information than what you've seen in open sources. You know, obviously, these missiles were launched as all of us were headed back home to our districts. I was actually already back in Richmond when the attack was announced. But look, I accept General Mattis, Secretary Mattis at his word. He believes that Syria was responsible for the deployment of these chemicals, and I do as well.
All right. Congressman McEachin, it's great to have you with us. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this morning.
And he brings up a good
Thank
point.
you for the opportunity.
It's a criticism that we've heard over and over again.